Ambazonians stand today in a deeply wounded, yet defiantly resilient phase. From the tear-stained streets of Bamenda to the quiet heartbreak within this very newsroom, and throughout the wider circle of Ambazonian leadership, this is a time etched in grief and sober reflection. We mourn the lives lost to senseless violence back home, especially the recent tragedies that have shaken Bamenda, and now we also mourn two giants of the Ambazonian liberation journey, Mrs. Emma Yoti Ndele, affectionately known to us here in Undaunted as Ma Ndele, and the Vice President, Mr. Eric Ate, both gone within just 24 hours. Their sudden passing has struck the Ambazonian movement with a devastating blow. A double tragedy that has left not just a void in leadership, but a heavy ache across the homeland and the diaspora. Ma Ndele's voice was more than a voice, it was a force. She believed in the transformative power of storytelling, undeniable, and her legacy will echo through every broadcast that we deliver from this day forward. The Vice President, Mr. Eric Ate, stood as a steady pillar of purpose, diplomacy, and unwavering commitment to the Ambazonian cause. This indeed is a painful hour for all of us, but then in the midst of our mourning, their light remains our guide. Good afternoon and welcome to the Flash News. I am Star Smart. Let's begin. Welcome back. Well, on the Iran and Israel war, we see the United States President Donald Trump has declared his disinterest in temporary ceasefires and calling instead for a real end to the ongoing Israel-Iran conflict. Well, let's take a look at this video of Donald Trump. Well, speaking after abruptly leaving the G7 summit to focus on the crisis, Trump signaled a clear break from drawn-out diplomatic cycles that often result in prolonged instability. His early departure underlines growing concern in Washington about the regional implication of the conflict and appears to align more firmly with Israel's hardline stance that deterrence without resolution only delays greater danger. Now, Israel targets Iran's Fordo nuclear facility with limited success. We see in recent days Israel has turned its attention to Iran's Fordo fuel enrichment plant, one of the most fortified sites in the Islamic Republic's nuclear infrastructure. Despite attempts to strike the facility, which lies deep within a mountain, the International Atomic Energy Agency affirmed that Israel has either been unable or unwilling to damage it significantly. The attack nonetheless sends a strong signal about Israel's resolve to confront Iran's nuclear capabilities. Fordo remains a key concern for Israeli and United States defense circles, representing a symbol of Tehran's defiance of international nuclear standards. Well, we're seeing a series of sharply worded statements, something that Trump has written. Yes, as you would see very soon on the screen, is President Trump's tweet, which revealed that the United States has precise intelligence on the location of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, calling him an easy target. However, Trump tempered the threats by stating the cleric is safe for now. This calculated rhetoric serves not only as a deterrent but also as a public display of the United States' reach and readiness, subtly reinforcing pressure on Iran's leadership amid escalating military and diplomatic tensions. But on the other hand, Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, has rejected any notion of surrender, vowing to resist external threats. Well, let's take a listen.
Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has released a statement as the conflict between Israel and Iran intensifies. He says the Iranian nation will stand firm against an imposed war, just as it will stand firm against an imposed peace. And this nation will not surrender to anyone in the face of imposition. The Americans should know that any US military intervention will undoubtedly cause irreparable damage.
Meanwhile, the United States is reportedly reviewing the possibility of deploying the GBU-57 bunker buster, a 30,000-pound bomb designed to penetrate heavily fortified underground facilities like the Fordo. Military experts say this may be the only viable option for dismantling Iran's most protected enrichment site. Now, as deliberations unfold in Washington, observers warn that the introduction of such a weapon could mark a dramatic shift from proxy warfare to direct engagement. Well, as Israel's military campaign advances, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu appears to be regaining firm control over the nation's political narrative. We know the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has long been viewed as politically vulnerable. Netanyahu is once again asserting his leadership through a widely supported defense strategy. Analysts note that his current trajectory is reminiscent of earlier wartime political resurgences, demonstrating that national security concerns can reshape internal political landscapes, especially when military precision and narrative control align. Now, with Israeli airstrikes now targeting areas near Tehran, fear and uncertainty are growing within Iran's capital. Well, CNN's Clarissa Ward reporting from Tel Aviv shared messages from Iranian civilians describing sleepless nights and risking anxiety as the conflict grows more unpredictable. Now, while direct damage inside the capital had remained minimal, the psychological toll is mounting. In a country where public dissent is tightly controlled, we wonder how much longer can internal pressure remain suppressed before it turns into something less predictable. Well, over to Gaza. With the war going on in Gaza, we see more than 50 people have been killed and over 200 injured in Gaza in what Palestinian health authorities have described as the deadliest Israeli airstrike since humanitarian aid was permitted into the enclave. The strike occurred amid Israel's drawn international concern. Israel has stated it is reviewing the incident and emphasized it is ongoing effort to distinguish military targets from civilian zones. Now, the Gaza crisis, though often viewed separately, continues to complicate regional optics and adds fuel to criticism from human rights groups. We see tensions are not only playing out on the battlefield within Israel. The internal media landscape is also under pressure, with far-right Israeli Minister of National Security, Itamar Ben-Gvir, has reiterated the government's stand against allowing Al Jazeera to report from Israeli territory. Ben-Gvir went a step further, calling for police action against any citizen caught watching the network Al Jazeera. Now, what could be driving such an aggressive posture against an international news outlet? Well, critics argue it is a move to curb what the government sees as disinformation during wartime, while supporters of the decision says it reflects a necessary crackdown on platforms accused of fanning anti-Israel sentiments during a volatile period. Where Russia's Putin emerges as power broker amid rising global attention away from the war in Israel and onto the war in Ukraine, Russia President Vladimir Putin is now positioning himself as one of the few leaders with direct access to both Israeli and Iranian leadership. With diplomatic lines to the White House still frosty, Putin has emerged as a possible broker of dialogue. Those skeptics question his intention. We have a reporter, CNN's Matthew Chance reports that Putin's maneuvering may serve more to elevate Russia's role on the world stage than to bring meaningful de-escalation. But still, in a fragmented global order, even opportunistic diplomacy may serve a purpose. But then unpredictability has begun to mark global calculus with tension escalating. Well, as the world crisis unfolds, uncertainty begins to reign. He might do it, but he might not. And you've got no idea whether he will. Then again, neither does he. Well, these are the words written by CNN's Stephen Collinson, referring to Trump's next move. And those words were based off of this interview by the NBC when asked if the United States was rooting closer to striking Iranian nuclear facilities. Here's what Donald Trump had to say.
Say that, right? You don't seriously think I'm going to answer that question. Will you strike the Iranian nuclear component? And what time exactly, sir? So would you strike it? Would you please inform us so we can be there and watch? I mean, you don't know that I'm going to even do it. You don't know. I may do it. I may not do it. I mean, nobody knows what I'm going to do. I can tell you this, that Iran's got a lot of trouble, and they want to negotiate. And I said, why didn't you negotiate with me before? All this death and destruction. Why didn't you negotiate? I said to the people, why didn't you negotiate with me 2 weeks ago? You could have done fine. You would have had a country. It's very sad to watch this. I mean, I've never said anything like it. It's so, everyone thought it was going to be the reverse. I didn't think so. And I was telling them, you got to do something. You got to negotiate. And at the end, last minute, they said, no, we're not going to do that, and they got hit.
Well, the observation captures the spirit of the moment, an uneasy balance between calculated moves and impulsive bricksmanship. Now, with each passing hour, questions grow louder. Will diplomacy hold? Will firepower override restraint? And can the region sustain another tipping point? These are the questions left unanswered. Away from the wars around the globe and onto the United States politics, we see authorities continuing investigations into what they describe as a targeted and calculated killing of a Minnesota lawmaker and her husband last Saturday. The suspect, identified as Thomas Berta, allegedly carried out the double assassination with a larger plan in mind, one that included a list of elected officials believed to be next in line. Well, courtesy of CNN, we have this video of Police Chief of Brooklyn Park Police Department, Mark Bruley, giving the details of the assassination.
It was not a real police officer. This is somebody that clearly had been impersonating a police officer, again, using the trust of this badge and this uniform to manipulate their way into the home. The circumstances that unfolded in Brooklyn Park this morning is that we assisted the Champlin Police Department on a shooting. That shooting was made aware by one of our sergeants that it was at Senator Hoffman's home. In hearing that very intuitive sergeant asked our officers to go check on Melissa Hortman's home, a representative that lives in our community, just proactively as due diligence to swing by. That police officer and his partner pulled down the street. When they arrived at Melissa's house, they noticed that there was a police vehicle in the driveway with the lights, emergency lights on, and what appeared to be a police officer at the door coming out of the house. When our officers confronted him, the individual immediately fired upon the officers, who exchanged gunfire, and the suspect retreated back into the home.
Well, there you have a breakdown and details of the story in short. But then law enforcement have continued to rule out broad conspiracies and urges the public to resist speculations as the probe moves forward. The FBI and state investigators are currently exploring mental health factors and digital footprints that could clarify the motive behind what officials are calling one of the most brazen political attacks in recent state history. But in a time when suspicion spreads faster than facts, how can the public stay informed without becoming inflamed? As the nation processes the shock, calls are growing for more nuanced conversations around security, mental health, and online radicalization without rushing to politicize a tragedy still under active investigation. So in the U.S., the United States immigration authorities are pursuing deportation proceedings against a Salvadoran journalist who rose to online prominence for live streaming immigration raids and advocating for undocumented migrants across major platforms. Now, according to court documentations, officials allege that the individual who entered the country on a temporary visa may have violated the terms of that statute by actively obstructing federal operations and sharing sensitive law enforcement details in real time. Now, authorities argue compromises operational safety and national interest. Those supporters argue he was simply exercising free speech. Immigration experts point out that constitutional protections and where actions begin to undermine enforcement or national security. In this case, the journalist's conduct may have crossed that line not due to his nationality or beliefs, but due to his interference with federal duties. The case is drawing attention not only because of the individual's influence, but also due to the broader national conversation around freedom of expression and lawful presence. While the Biden-era immigration narrative often celebrated visibility, the Trump administration, now back in office, has emphasized enforcement, borders, and institutional integrity. So while activists fight for justice for immigrants, one question that lingers is it truly unjust to expect visitors to respect the laws of the country that hosts them, or is it only normal? But officials continue to insist that every deportation case is judged on its own merit and a hearing is set to determine whether these individuals' action qualifies for expulsion under federal law. While in a decision that has sparked debate across ideological lines, we see the United States Supreme Court has upheld Tennessee's law banning gender-affirming medical treatment for minors, effectively affirming the rights of states to regulate care involving children under 18. We see the ruling was met with relief from conservative lawmakers who have long argued that minors should not be subjected to irreversible medical procedures during formative years. The majority opinion emphasized the state's legitimate interest in protecting children and not ideologies, particularly given ongoing debates among medical professionals regarding long-term outcomes of such treatment. Now, amid argument from both sides, one question rings out loud. When it comes to decisions involving irreversible medical procedures on minors, shouldn't the burden of caution outweigh the pressure of ideology? While advocacy groups voiced concerns that this could embolden similar measures in other states, the ruling stops short of creating a nationwide precedent against transgender care. Instead, it defers authority to individual states, a fundamental principle of federalism deeply rooted in American governance. Many Americans remain torn, not out of hatred or intolerance, but out of confusion in an era of evolving identities, competing rights, and shifting definitions. Amid emotionally charged discourse, this decision aims to provide states the room to legislate carefully while still allowing for legal recourse where constitutional overreach occurs. The administration has urged for calm and respect on both sides, emphasizing that disagreements must not lead to division. But still on federal issues, we see the federal judge blocking Trump's policy on passport sex markers in a development that diverges from recent conservative victories. We see a federal judge has temporarily blocked a Trump administration directive that aimed to restrict the issuance of non-binary and alternate sex markers on United States passports. Now, the court ruled that the policy could cause unjustified hardship to Americans who have already been issued such documentations or are in transition under current legal frameworks. Now, in her opinion, the judge cited inconsistencies between the administration's proposed limits and existing procedural norms within the State Department. The ruling, while a setback for Trump-era administrative reforms, was welcomed by some as a check on rapid policy shifts, especially when documentation plays a direct role in travel, identity validation, and civil engagement. Still, the broader Republican rationale remains focused on standardization, fraud prevention, and diplomatic clarity, particularly in international setting where sex markers affect visa processing and border scrutiny. Now, critics argue that passport design should reflect medically and legally verified identities, not shifting cultural interpretations. But then can a nation maintain secure borders if its documents lose their legal clarity? Is the question that lingers. The ruling is likely to be appealed, and the case may eventually reach the Supreme Court. But for now, the policy remains paused, and affected individuals may continue using existing documentations until further notice. Still in the U.S. seems to be tightening the vetting for students' visa amid security review. Now, the United States State Department has issued a directive to all embassies and consulates requiring heightened scrutiny of students' visa applicants. Under the new guidance, officials must now assess whether applicants demonstrate hostile attitude towards American citizens, culture, government, institutions, or founding principles. We see this directive coming after a temporary suspension of visa appointments in late May following internal reviews reportedly triggered by concerns over foreign influence, particularly from countries with authoritarian regimes. Under President Trump, renewed focus on immigration with national interests at the forefront, the administration has sought to balance openness in academic exchange with safeguarding the United States institutions from ideological threats. Officials clarified that the resumption of paused appointments will proceed alongside the updated vetting procedures, with consular officers expected to use discretion and avoid profiling based on nationality alone. This marks a notable shift in immigration processing, one that reflects increasing awareness of how some students may be used, knowingly or unknowingly, as vectors of foreign influence within American academia. Now, while critics argue this may stoke xenophobia, the administration insists it is not about nationality, but about loyalty to the principles that underpin democratic coexistence. And truly, Canadian nation afford to train its adversaries under the banner of hospitality. Well, Trump exits the G7 early has been in the news since this week. President Donald Trump's early exit from the Group of Seven summit in rural Canada Monday was abrupt, but not without explanation. According to the White House, the decision was driven by operational security concerns, with the president suggesting there may have been prying ears in the secluded environment where sensitive discussions were underway. The summit, hosted in a heavily wooded retreat, began with standard diplomatic exchanges, but quickly shifted into restricted meetings. Trump reportedly expressed unease about holding high-level talks in areas where intelligence threats may be harder to detect, especially amid reports of foreign surveillance activity in similar setting. The president's early departure drew criticism from some quarters, but White House officials defended the move as precautionary rather than political. Trump returned to Washington by overnight flight, and resume national security briefings the next morning. Supporters see the decision as consistent with Trump's long-standing posture: when in doubt, protect the state. Whether negotiating trade, discussing military posture, or coordinating with allies, the administration has stressed that secure environments are non-negotiable. In an age where cyber espionage, deep listening devices, and data leaks are part of modern warfare, the real question may be, how many conversations are truly private these days? But President Trump, in another development, has nominated former Fox News host and interim U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro to serve a full-time as the top federal prosecutor in Washington, D.C. Pirro, former judge and district attorney with decades of experience in criminal law, has been serving in an acting capacity since early this year. Her nomination now formalizes the role, placing a trusted legal voice at the helm of one of the nation's most high-profile prosecutorial offices. Now, the White House described Pirro as a principled, fearless legal advocate with a record of upholding the rule of law with fairness and determination. During her tenure on Fox News, she became known for her unapologetic defense of constitutional conservatism and for highlighting issues often underreported in mainstream legal commentary. Now, while critics have raised concerns over her partisan background, administration officials note that Pirro's legal track record predates her media career and her courtroom credibility stands independent of her television persona. Her supporters say she brings clarity, toughness, and legal rigor to a role that has too often been entangled in political optics. Now, as confirmation proceeding looms, her nomination reflects a broader Trump-era strategy, placing professionals with unambiguous legal views and deep-rooted patriotism in key federal roles. In the capital city where ambiguity often reigns, could clarity, however, hold be the antidote that the justice system quite needs? It's a question that the future will give an answer to. But then away from the United States politics and into what is happening with India. We see, with bandages still fresh on his face and arm, Vishwash Kumar Ramesh walked beside his brother's flower-covered coffin. His steps slow, his gaze heavy as the two were wheeled into a crematorium in the coastal town of Diu, western India. Just days ago, the brothers had boarded Air India Flight 374, a routine domestic journey from Mumbai to Diu. What should have been a short, uneventful flight ended in catastrophe when the aircraft lost control during descent amid what investigators believe were sudden wind shear and critical mechanical failure. The plane crashed just minutes before landing. All but one of the 47 people on board perished. Ramesh, now the sole survivor, was seated near the rear of the aircraft when it broke apart. Rescued with severe injuries, he remains under medical observation, but was released briefly to attend his brother's cremation, a moment he told local press he could not afford to miss. The funeral drew crowds of grieving residents, government officials, and members of India's aviation board. A formal investigation has now been launched by India's Directorate General of Civil Aviation, the DGCA, with Boeing and Air India both pledging cooperation. Preliminary findings point to a combination of mechanical and weather-related causes, though full reports are still pending. Families of victims have demanded accountability not only from Air India but also from regulatory agencies tasked with ensuring aviation safety in the country. Compensation talks are underway, but for many, no amount can make up for the loved ones that they have lost. Well, as the sun set over Diu, Ramesh, visibly shaken but dignified, lit the pyre. The scene marked more than a farewell. It was a sobering reminder of how fragile life is at 35,000 feet, and how survival, while miraculous, can carry the heaviest weight of all. We're still in India and away from the barriers. We see in a major diplomatic breakthrough, India and Canada have agreed to restore the full diplomatic relations, including the re-establishment of high commissions in New Delhi and Ottawa. The announcement marks a critical step forward after nearly 2 years of strained silence between the two democracies. The diplomatic thaw came following a high-level meeting between Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Canada's new Prime Minister, Mark Carney, held on the sidelines of the Group of Seven summit in the Canadian Rockies. Received a decision to reset ties follows a period of deep tension rooted in Ottawa's accusation in 2023 that India's operatives were allegedly involved in the extrajudicial killings of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, a Sikh separatist and Canadian citizen, on Canadian soil. India had firmly denied the allegations at the time, calling them absurd and politically motivated, and accusing Canada of harboring extremists under the guise of free expression. In the wake of the fallout, both countries withdrew diplomatic staff, suspended security cooperations, and froze key trade negotiations, including a potential bilateral investment agreement. Now, with a new administration in Canada, led by former Bank of England Governor Mark Carney, the tone appears to have shifted towards pragmatism and reconciliation. Well, let's take a look at what that looks like.
Prime Minister, it's a great honor to host you at the G7. India has been coming to the G7, I believe, since 2018 in Biarritz with our French partners, and it's a testament to the importance of your country, to your leadership, and to the importance of the issues that we look to tackle together, from energy security, from the energy transition that you're helping to lead, to the future of artificial intelligence, to the fight that we have against transnational repression, against terrorism, against other factors, and the work that we can do together. And it is my great honor to have you here. I enjoyed your intervention just now, and we look forward to our discussion.
एक्सेलेंसी, मैं आपका बहुत बहुत आभारी हूँ कि आपने G7 में भारत को निमंत्रित किया, और मेरा भी सौभाग्य है कि मुझे 2015 के बाद फिर से एक बार कनाडा की धरती पर आकर के कनाडा के लोगों के साथ जुड़ने का एक अवसर मिला है। भारत दुनिया की सबसे बड़ा लोकतांत्रिक देश है। पिछले दिनों G20 समिट की अध्यक्षता के रूप में भारत ने विश्व के लिए अनेक उपकारक ऐसे इनिशिएटिव लिए हैं। आज G7 के अंदर
While officials on both sides have expressed hope that the reopening of diplomatic channels will rebuild trust, enable trade discussions, and reinvigorate consular collaborations, especially vital for the hundreds of thousands of Indian nationals living and studying in Canada. Well, let's take a look at some of the implications and significance of the renewed ties. We'll take a look at the regional stability and diaspora diplomacy. The normalization of ties could calm anxieties among the large Indian diaspora in Canada, many of whom felt caught in the geopolitical crossfire. Improved relations could also discourage the politicization of diaspora issues, especially around Khalistan separatism, which remains a sensitive topic in Indian domestic affairs. For the economic engagement, Canada had paused talks on the Early Progress Trade Agreement, the EFTA, with India amid tensions. Now, the diplomatic relations restored, these discussions are most likely to resume, offering a path to deeper energy education and technology cooperations. For India, this also strengthens its broader Indo-Pacific economic outreach. On the intelligence and security cooperations, perhaps most significantly, as the move may reopen back channels for counter-terrorism intelligence sharing, which were quietly effective prior to the fallout. Both nations face evolving challenges from extremism and transnational networks, making renewed cooperation not only strategic but necessary. On global optics and multilateral balance, the reset comes at a time when both India and Canada are recalibrating their positions in global affairs. India continues to assert itself as a major non-aligned power, while Canada, under Carney's leadership, is refocusing on diplomacy and climate leadership. A public reconciliation sends a message to allies and international observers that democracies can disagree, but also reconcile through diplomacy. Well, as the world turns through shifting alliances, rising tensions, and moments of unexpected diplomacy, from the quiet reset between India and Canada to the fiery rhetoric defining the Middle East and the polarization decisions shaping the United States, there is one truth that remains. Nations are being tested, and so are people. In this unpredictable global landscape, Ambazonia also stands not only in mourning, but also in awakening. Ambazonia stories unfolding in a world where the fight for self-determination, truth, and justice is becoming louder, not fainter. So, even as Ambazonia grieves in this moment, we remain alert even in sorrow. We stay connected to the world and to each other. And with this, we draw the curtains on the Flash News for today to a close. But of course, do not forget to tune into Undaunted Primetime News coming up at 8 p.m. Amba time. Thank you for watching. We leave you with ABC Amba TV images. Have a great day.